All right, I think we are live again, guys, for another Monday episode of DCA. Yes, we are lower again. Yes, we are all still going to tell you how bullish we are. It's just been one of those weeks. I was reading this week that it's been the worst start to stocks in September for over 23 years. So definitely been a bit of a macro wobble over the last week. That's taken down tech stocks, taken down broader stocks. China's looking a little bit weak. Europe's looking a little bit weak. We did say that, September, traditionally you get a lot of volatility, but it's a good time to be stacking. How are you guys all doing? Maybe we'll start with you, James. How are you feeling about the market here?
Good. Some things are running very counter to the market as well, which is interesting.
Tesla,
yeah, exactly. But painting with a broad brush, when you look across everything, across the planet, it's a disaster zone. But when you listen to government officials, everything is fine. You know, the little meme with the place on fire, a little dog sitting on a chair. It's so funny. Like Janet Yellen was classic this week or last week. Oh, soft landing is great. The job market's really strong. It's like, what data is she looking at? I mean, it's horrific. Anyway.
Yeah, a little bit crazy. How you doing, CTO? I know.
I had a bit of a challenging week. Yeah. I had a bit of a challenging week, but today I'm doing fantastic in every way.
And what about you, Marty? How you feeling about the market? How's your community feeling as well?
Pretty good. I mean, I think we're in that really hard stage of the Wyckoff distribution, where it's doing the retest of the previous low. Like, was it the spring? And this is the ultimate shakeout zone. So it's very hard, obviously, for new people, anybody new to the market struggling. They haven't seen it before. But for long traders and accumulators, this is the sweet spot, right? This is where you got your finger on the button. It's almost time for those glorious longs that stick, or those amazing entries that bring your price down, your average price. So I'm happy. It's been 200 days waiting for this time. Now, I mean, September is stacked. I don't know if you guys saw. September is just a ridiculous month. Macro and crypto. It's loaded. So I expect it to be just extremely volatile. And then it gets bullish towards the end of the month. The beginning of the month to the middle of the month, through the Gary Gensler hearings, I think will be bearish. And then we'll get, obviously, the debate is number one. That's tomorrow, guys. Do not miss that. I think that debate might be a catalyst in either direction. We don't know. But what a week. What a week.
It's definitely going to be a big couple of weeks. Like I said, I agree with you. I've set the DCA to be max bullish in about 30 days time. That's when everything will be deployed, but I've definitely front loaded it now. But I think those first 2 weeks of October is when I'm going to be most bullish. We'll go into kind of what, because Bitcoin did hit around 52K on Friday. ETH was nearly at 2,000. Solana actually outperformed even on that Friday, but it was definitely a weakness across crypto on that Friday. And that was after the US jobs figure, which again came in slightly less than expected. The odds again of a 50 bip rate cut, which is going to be happening, the Fed decision is next week, which is one of many different things happening over the next 2 weeks, seem to increase. But you did see tech stocks go a little bit lower. They're lower again today. And like I said, we've had one of the worst starts to September in 23 years. I don't really know what to make of that from a general sentiment, like how it can affect crypto, because I think it can have many different moves. We haven't really had 100% correlation to the NASDAQ recently, but it definitely did feel like we were correlated on Friday when everything seemed to be going lower. I do think that this now looks like we could be heading slightly more chance towards a recession. You saw, I think I saw this from Dan Tepiero today, which is Challenger data had me a little worried. For over a year, I've been saying the Fed over tightened, inflation stayed high, but readings peaked over 2 years ago. China and EU soft, central banks easing. Looks like US unemployment going to 5.5% to 6%. This should be bullish for Bitcoin, but there is definitely kind of a short-term correlation to tech stocks, which I think we could see some weakness in September. You look at a lot of this stuff, Marty, as well. Like, how do you feel about now? It's now looking like we're going to have a slightly better chance, slightly higher chance of a US recession.
Yeah, I think that there's no way we avoid a recession. They hiked too high and they held it too long. The complete opposite of what they're saying. The only thing that I turn to is, was it intentional? Do they have another strategy, another agenda we're not aware of? Are they trying? Do they know that Trump's going to win, and so they're trying to leave him a mess, or so? I don't know. and we'll hear more about that tomorrow. But what you said earlier is interesting. I always watch for the correlation to Bitcoin, and it seems like you're right. We have swung to NASDAQ futures. It seems to be correlating with the NASDAQ futures now. So once again, being traded as a technology stock, which it's completely not. So there's that mismatch as well. And I always find that towards the bottoms, it starts to correlate to the NASDAQ futures. I think Bitcoin is hunting for its bottom. And my primary signal for the last 2 cycles has been those Bitfinex longs, and we'll get into that later. And on August 28th, exactly 12 noon, they started to go in. And they've continued going up. And we'll look at that later on. But that to me is, I'm going off that. I think we've hit a bottom on Bitcoin. Bitcoin will turn the corner. I think the stock market will come down and Bitcoin will go up and catch up to gold. That's what I think.
It's definitely a bit of a global sell-off. We've seen also some weakness out of China this morning. Their consumer price data came in lower than expected. I think Japan's GDP came in lower than expected. For me, like I've just said, all of this points to more cowbell, more easing down the line. But it does feel as though global markets, at least risk markets, all took a move south. Anything you were looking at in particular from a macro side, James?
Yeah, in fact, you just hit on China. This is probably the most startling thing.
Brutal.
We had the worst contraction in 25 years in China. And they know things are bad. And you talk about cowbell, the Chinese money is going to go into high gear big time because they're very, very competitive. And I can't remember the exact detail. Actually, maybe add that again, because there's some interesting background behind this history. Because 25 years ago, China was a bit of a nothing burger. Right now, it is, I think, when this first came out, they were 3% of global GDP. Now it's over 20% of global GDP. So just the point of that alone, when China contracts and it's such a major player on the planet, that should give everybody an extreme amount of concern right now. Like if you were the Fed or Yellen or other people. But again, it all results in more cowbell real fast.
Yeah, just to go into specifics there a little bit, it feels as though it is the real estate market, which is really burst. Real estate stocks have not bounced. In fact, there was a lot of pieces out over the weekend from various different local banks talking about how terrible things are. They're down 90% in 4 years. They are at lows last seen around 2008. So it's really the real estate bubble which has popped horrifically in China and just hasn't really bounced. You had a very brief bounce earlier this year, but it still feels like it's heading lower. And obviously population dynamics don't help there. So China's obviously going to have to start printing. It's very, very clear. It is got an incredible amount of debt to GDP if you include some of their local government debt. It's kind of above 250%. So who knows what that happens there? But it does feel like China is one of the worries. Japan as well. There was some comments last week that they are happy to keep on raising rates again, where they're kind of going back into the trying to create strength on the yen after seeing some higher inflation figures. And who knows if we see the carry trade unwind there. Maybe we'll go back into kind of the technicals here of what you're seeing, CTO. Like how are you looking at Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana as they've reacted? I know they kind of hit that low on Friday. They bounced over the weekend, and then they're heading slightly lower again today.
Yeah, I have some charts as usual, but I just want to ask you all, because those announced job hirings that you showed, they were shockingly low. Everyone in the audience, did you look at the numbers? They were shocking. Is the economy this bad, or is it or are the numbers not reported yet, or are we seeing the first wave of the AI revolution that companies are hiring fewer people?
It's a great point. I don't have a chart for it, CTO, but there was one staggering chart, and that looks at the number of job openings compared to the number of people unemployed. It's rare that they equate, and they did equate for the first time ever. Normally, like there can be 5 job listings for every job technically, and even if people have a listing, they're very picky about who they hire. But for now, the amount of jobs that are available compared to the number of unemployment is very, very startling. I'll try to pull up that graphic, but it is concerning because the amount of job openings has tanked and the amount of unemployment people have gone up like this.
Yeah, I think what you touched upon there is what most people are worried about, which is AI jobs. This is software development jobs. And you can see they've been absolutely destroyed as AI has become
Back to
more
COVID levels.
right, like absolutely destroyed software jobs. Some of these other jobs which have been less affected, physicians and surgeons, obviously haven't been affected. Some of the food preparation jobs are kind of more stable, but a lot of these are tech jobs or high class jobs. You would say like well paid jobs, white collar jobs that potentially are all at threat here from AI. And there's been a lot of talk about whether this is maybe we'll see a more persistent increase here in unemployment. Or at least maybe even a reduction in wages as you start to see AI become more prevalent in society. I do think it's something to watch. I don't know if we're like there yet, but it's definitely something that people are talking about, particularly when you see software jobs like that going.
And we've got two technologists on the line. What do you guys think of this? Shamath Palapataya always talks about how the fact now with AI, a software developer becomes quickly as productive as 3 to 5 software developers, and even better. Do you guys agree with that statement?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people who think they have a safe job today don't have a safe job. I think the world is going to change much more than we realize. And I think everyone here watching who's trying to study, investment in technology and so on, that's the right action to take, not to kind of bank on your safe job. There's very few safe jobs unless you're working at, I don't know, like paradoxically, a lot of the lower end jobs, they are actually safe. I don't know if you're working at McDonald's or like driving the garbage truck or something like that. Perhaps, those kind of jobs will still remain. But a lot of the high end jobs where people drive a very nice car, they live in a very expensive home and so on, I think a lot of those jobs will actually get replaced in many sectors.
I think the sad part is we know because we're on it every day, but a lot of the people out there haven't been told. I think it's going to come in a wave of a shocking wave, which is sad. I try to tell people. I have people on my community from all over the world, and I have a recruiter from Canada, and he just fills me in every day. He says it's never been worse. It's worse than COVID. Nobody has jobs anywhere right now. People are all laid off in Canada, Ontario specifically, very bad. But the point I like to make is that we're at debt to GDP ratio in the US, same as World War II right now, right? And is there a war? Maybe we don't know about it, but I don't think there is a war. And we have the same unemployment as COVID. It's like, what's going on? Like, it's clear it's worse than they're telling us. And I think the chickens are going to come home to roost in the next weeks and months on those factors. And
I think so too.
Maybe they'll do what they've been doing. They'll report numbers and then apologize and correct them 2 weeks later. They might be doing that going forward all the way to the election, because there's no way in the street. Janet Yellen is just flat out wrong. People are worried. There are no jobs. I have a friend who's a CTO in San Francisco for a tech Glassnode, a tech recruiter. He says it's never been worse. Canada recruiter, never been worse. We're just not being told the truth, guys. Something's going on.
Yep.
I think so too. You have to kind of take your own control of your own economy, guys, and predict that this is going to happen. It will be like a slow moving revolution, but it will come, guaranteed. I have some Bitcoin charts. I just wanted to touch on that because it was staggering, those numbers you showed, Mando.
I noticed it already. Like some of those projects that I'm working in right now, like Cursor, which has become like the #1 AI tool for developers, right? Like people are just building whole sites by themselves. They do yes, you need to have some
5 minutes,
some rudimentary knowledge of various different programming languages sometimes, but it does feel as though that whole industry is being revolutionized right now. You can see it.
And they're the highest salaries. So these are people that are earning a lot of money with a high lifestyle, large debts, large mortgages, big families in high neighborhoods. They're going to get laid off. What are they going to do, man? It's frightening. That's a very frightening thing.
Short time.
Exactly. So if someone is hesitating to take something that seems risky, take like a step forward and thinking, should I do it or should I stay in my safe lane? I'm telling you guys, your lane isn't safe for most people. So, dare to move forward. That would be my tip. Back to Bitcoin chart.
And actually, another interesting point before we talk about Bitcoin here right now, if we compare the 2021 all-time high to today, after the 40% debasement since C19 2020, we're 40% away from the all-time high. So the chart may tell you one thing, but when you look in real purchasing power terms, it's a very different story.
Very true. That's a very good point. In many metrics, we never reached the all-time high.
Yep.
So okay,
Cheers,
so but a
cheers
little bit shorter, medium. Sorry.
Cheer us up, make us happy.
Yeah, let's get back into crypto a little bit here. So
Exactly. I think it's an important insight because I think a lot of people are held back to take the right action now because we're addicted to safety and so on, and it's anyway not safe. So then why not go for it? Anyway, here is the Bitcoin chart, and I think there is one glimmer of hope here because for half a year we've been in this super clear pattern: lower lows, lower lows, lower lows, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, which creates this expanding triangle, or it has different names. Perhaps, I'm not saying it for sure yet, but if price finds strength here, this last Friday's wick could become the first higher low. It's too early to say, but it's something worth monitoring. If price finds strength here and moves up, we have settled the first higher low in 6 months, and that would be massive. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying, like, watch this, guys, because that would be a shift in this pattern that we have seen for half a year. So that's what I'm watching now.
What's crazy about that number? It's the sixth low, but it's the first high one in 6 months. You get it? Like the cadence is almost like every month over the last 6 months. I think it's an interesting pattern.
Yeah.
Somebody will come up with an indicator for that.
Hopefully, it doesn't get that lower band of that range. That's what people are looking at. Maybe we'll go into who's been buying the dip though, actually, first, because Marty, you've been very keen to show out this data, and I was looking at over the weekend. Bitfinex, which is kind of OG Bitcoin trading. You generally follow them as the smartest traders in the room. You've been showing that they. Maybe I'll just share my screen to show the data because it's pretty wild how much they have been. They've been growing a long position, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you go, I made a chart of the last, since 2017. If you reverse correlate with the Bitfinex longs, you'll see it. It's an unbelievable early predictor of a bottom. And if you don't know, iFinex is the Hong Kong Chinese holding company that owns Tether and Bitfinex. So Bitfinex and Tether are the same thing. And Tether has 118 billion printed Tether right now, record number, which is out of the market, most of it. I think what you're seeing is Tether will create the bottom. I think that's what's going to happen. And so they're on their exchange, they start to long early to front run it. I also like to watch the
sell, but Marty, didn't they also sell between 60 and 67K?
What's that? No, that's the number of longs.
Okay.
It's not the price of Bitcoin. That's the number of longs.
But I thought the Bitfinex whales sold, all around 65K, 67K, and they're getting again.
I remember reading that. Yeah. They had reduced their positions earlier. So they're just generally the account to follow. I don't really know what else to say about this, but you've hit the nail on the head. They obviously have a very high correlation to calling the market, and just to give some scale on this, so this was only a few days ago that they've really started to
6 a.m. Look at that. Exactly at 6 a.m. 6 a.m. 28th of August they started. And
if this is related to Tether, Tether does buy periodically large amounts of Bitcoin too. But if not, then it does feel like it's a good signal to see. They are the main account seemingly buying this dip in decent size. We have seen some other takes on the timeline. Originally, Arthur Hayes went short. He then came out. What was this? Yesterday, closed my Bitcoin short, made 3% profit, enough to carry my food and bar tab. Basically pointing to the fact that Yellen is going to rise more with more liquidity. Like Yellen's going to turn on the taps, so is the Fed. This is not a time to sell. You have Peter Brandt, who has basically got the exact chart we just had from CTO, pointing to the idea that we could go down to like 46K, which again would be kind of where this channel was. But it feels like that was at 56K. We went down to 52K and we formed a little bit of a bottom here. If that is a lower high, that'd be very, very bullish. And hopefully then we could see us return to that upper trend. I think that's kind of what we're all saying. Like, hopefully that it doesn't go down to 46K, but if it does, that would kind of be following this exact trend that we've had since February.
Just to clarify, the BTC longs chart it refers to the sum of all Bitcoin that traders have borrowed or are holding in anticipation of the price increasing. That's what that chart is.
Right.
BTC longs. It's not the price of Bitcoin.
It does feel as though there's a range of views here, but the bearish people seem to be pointing to the idea that we could follow that channel all the way down to the high 40s, and then bullish people are saying we've just hit a higher low. You have Bitfinex longs coming into the market, and this is a time to buy. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. We've spoken about this a few times, but we've got token 2449, you've got Solana breakpoint, you've got the Fed, you've got Trump, versus Kamala. It does feel as though there's a range of different things that will keep it volatile, but I don't know. I'm just hoping, and I'm just hoping that we don't rip out of this too quickly. Honestly, like that is generally with that DCA going for the next 30 days. This is, I think, a window to maybe buy, and then hopefully towards next month we start to see some more bullishness come out of things.
I mean, I still think we could see a V-shaped recovery at the last moment to 48, but it wouldn't last long. It would be a few hours. Just to clear all the longs, there's a large band of longs at 48 to 50. But we know there's a big buy wall at 50, which has bounced off there already once. And that, I think, is the spring. I mean, I study Wyckoff. I think a Wyckoff is very accurate. And so that was the spring, I believe. Well, based on this bottom, like you just said, CTO, that is the bottom, and higher low. That's the retest of the previous secondary test in the second phase. Then this should be trading up now. So there's a lot of confirmations that this is potentially the bottom, but there's never really been a bottom in Bitcoin of this magnitude without a V-shaped recovery. So we should anticipate a potential flush to 48. And I have limit longs on Coinbase to buy. I'm in limit buys. So what you can do as a trader is put limit orders at 45, 46, 47, 48. And if you're a long trader, long now, add some margin, push your liquidation below, down to 43, and you're prepared for both scenarios.
So I think maybe let's touch upon what's been going on in the Bitcoin ETF maybe a little bit, because that's it's had 1 billion of outflows since August 28th, August 27th, I think it was. So 1 billion of outflows. It's obviously been a big success before that, but volumes have been dropping off and outflows. I saw Jim Pianko, who's like a pretty well-known, I would say, person to follow in macro, came out with a pretty bearish take. He's been bullish on crypto in the past, but says bot Bitcoin ETFs, TLDR, inflows, not outflows. Totals have record losses. Advisors holding under 10% of holdings. Average trade size is now 12K. It's not an adoption vehicle. Instead, it's a small tourist tool and on-chain returning to TradFi. He has a big, long eight post spread about everything that he doesn't like about the Bitcoin ETFs. I read through it, and to be honest, I think the Bitcoin ETFs has been one of the most successful ETFs of all time. He just has a very, very high benchmark for what would be successful. But there has been some other FUD this week, Marty. Maybe you can go into that. I think I had that up here.
I mean, we've always known. I mean, when the
transactions, yeah.
Remember when the SEC fought to have the in-cash settlement, and specifically with BlackRock's methodology, we always knew. I mean, my community, we were going on about it then. Is your inflows and outflows are in cash. Coinbase holds all the Bitcoin, and it's completely opaque. It's never on chain. It doesn't affect the price. We don't know what's going on. Are they doing OTC deals? But people have been barking for 200 days. How come there's all these inflows, but the price never changes, never goes up, it just goes down? And so just more people are becoming aware of that. I think, it's just coming out. There's something going on.
So can you explain this to me a little bit?
What I would love is clarity. We would just need clarity from either Coinbase or from BlackRock, like exactly what is going on internally between BlackRock and Coinbase. How are they actually settling? We don't know.
So seemingly they have 2 to 30 days to settle to a 1-to-1 holding ratio. That's basically what they're saying?
That's right. And that 2 days. Within that 2 days, right? They can do whatever they want.
And
so we believe they're borrowing Bitcoin and shorting on the CME to do a cash and carry trade.
Yep, and that makes complete sense, right? Because during the last 165 days of ETFs, a very large percentage over the last 3 months or so, the zero buys or sells from BlackRock.
Exactly.
With
Zero.
huge volume. They're doing over $1 billion a day, zero change in their holdings. Now, Arkham have published their wallet, at least what they believe to be their wallet, which does reflect what they should hold. But I think it all goes back down to two very simple principles, maybe three. We have the carry trade. We've got the 13 or 15 hedge funds like Millennium and others that have been in and out of the game, the tourists. Okay. Then we have Grayscale, which dumped 400,000 Bitcoin in a little over 7 months. That's 2/3 of their bag. And that was all absorbed. So I think, much respect to Charlie Bilolo and others, but they're not looking at the bigger picture. They haven't looked at the 5Gs dumping, the Germany, the Grayscale, the Genesis, the Gox, yada, 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 and how it's weathered all these storms and still is up. And also the net flow into these ETFs is still very positive, So not only did they absorb all of the 400,000 from Grayscale, but also added a big bag as well. So I think people don't have the detail, and sometimes people comment on Bitcoin without being very deep in Bitcoin, and that can mislead some stuff too. But it's true.
Some clarity would clear it up. I think if there needs to be some clarity, I think a statement needs to be made from either Brian Armstrong or Larry Fink on exactly how it works and to set people at ease and at least publish the audits that they said would be made public. They've never published one. So we have no auditing information either.
So anyway, it does feel intraday trades are definitely not the intraday trades. The volume that we see going through, they're not buying and selling Bitcoin. That's very, very clear. Like they're not doing that intraday. Only at the end of the day are they settling. And it's seemingly at the end of the day, they have between 2 and 30 days to actually settle to that 1-to-1 ratio. So they can end up just borrowing it instead of buying it. So it does feel as though there is room there for them to do some games. They definitely, I would agree with you that you probably need to have greater oversight of what they can do in that sort of period.
And that's just with me. One of the other ETF issues actually came out as well. I posted on my page, and was sort of selling their ETF as opposed to BlackRock because they're extremely transparent. So they've done that. They actually make it publicly available, all their wallets, all the movements. But BlackRock doesn't do that. We just need to see that, some clarity.
And just to make sure people know, what we've always said is Bitwise is the firm you're talking about. They are the most transparent. And if you have to buy a BlackRock, a Bitcoin ETF, make sure it's Bitwise because they are crypto native. They give part of their fees back to the developers of Bitcoin, and they're very transparent. You can track their wallets in real time. So
I agree.
So maybe let's move on to kind of altcoins, let's say, as a broader group, because we did see Bitcoin dominance fall for the first time in many, many months. We had Bitcoin dominance currently sitting in an important zone. This has kind of been in a resistance and support zone for many, many years, actually, around this 58% level. We saw it dip around that sort of level over the last few days. In fact, you saw some of the altcoins lead the gains. You've seen things like Sui, you've seen things like Helium, you've seen a range of different DeFi protocols kind of lead the weekly gains. Solana has kind of been a bit more mixed on the week. ETH obviously hasn't had a good week. Is anyone looking at different altcoins here for this sort of rebound? If we think that Bitcoin's going back up to let's say 90 to 100K, do you think it's really a Bitcoin trade or Solana, or is there any other altcoins that people are looking at?
I can start showing some chart maybe.
Yeah, Helium is one that keeps on coming up for me. This is the mobile service provider in the US, which has now got, I think, 120,000 subscribers and is growing absolutely massively. That was the best performing altcoin last week. It's just interesting to look at.
Yeah. So the Bitcoin dominance, I have exactly the same chart as you showed there, that the resistance is really around where we are now. Price kind of is hesitating here. So clearly the market isn't sure. Are we Bitcoin led still? Is this continuing up? Or will we get altcoins coming back, because they've been absolutely slaughtered, almost all of them, for this period? So I think we don't really have the answer. We're just at that critical point now. So it will be very interesting to see. I think the maybe most noteworthy chart that I noticed among the ones that we usually talk about is the Solana to USD chart, because price was right at support, and this is right at support again. So far, this is holding. I mean, everyone can see here how many times this level has been absolutely key for Solana, and it's still holding here. And also the Sol to BTC chart is also quite a bit of distance from the support, which is at 0.002. And then almost everything else looks still absolutely garbage, led by the ETH to BTC chart, while a few exceptions, BNB to BTC, still looks comparably good, not at all like the ETH to BTC chart. So I haven't looked at the Helium chart. I'll bring it up.
Helium, I think Sui's the other one. Sui, again, we've spoken about a few times on this show as being something that people have been flocking to, potentially as one of the next L1s to come through. I think it had a good week last week, although it hasn't. I think it's still down on the year. It's not like it's had them, or maybe only slightly positive on the year. It's just had some recent sort of strength. James, how are you feeling about Solana here? Because obviously, as CTO said, it's a little bit of a nervous point because it's sitting at that support ratio. We're obviously going into breakpoint, which I think a lot of people had very, very bullish expectations for. But I don't know if people are like going into that hoping to sell on those expectations, or what's your view?
This is one piece. Like Solana hit despite Rectember and everything else, Solana hit a record high in daily active users of 4.6 million. If you compare that to Ethereum, like ETH is there 340,000. Sui, you just spoke about 350,000, is basically the same. So the adoption of this chain is transcending everything. I think during this bull market, we could see 10 million daily active users coming to this chain, which on a monthly basis would be 100 million, which means there could be 1 billion people using crypto in the world in any given month. That's just a big thing. So that's the thesis remains. I look forward to hearing what they say at the conference. I said, Mert said 3 big announcements the world is not ready for, doesn't even know about, and it doesn't include Firedancer. So we don't know what's coming. But yes, Sui has been doing, outperforming, but every dog has its day, as they say. So it's just how the market works. So.
It does feel as though Sui is just something that people are maybe jumping on. I haven't seen like a massive increase in their users. It's more just the chart looks good, and
they released a handheld hardware gaming device in the week. That's what I think kicked off the pump.
Yeah.
So and actually did really well. I think they sold out their pre-sale. It's a really cool device. You should check it out. I mean, I went long on Sui at 46 cents. So I've been calling it since the bottom. My first entry to was out the gate at $1.30, so I'm under on my first entry. I picked up more down low at 50 cents at I think 98 cents. So I'm pretty much break even right now on Sui, but I think Sui will move from 2.5 billion market cap into the top 10 in the bull run. It's that good.
Yeah.
So that's quite a launch. That's a 10x.
They have a conference I think next month. SuiCon. Is there anything that, if you're closer to it, is there anything that you're looking for that? I saw the gaming device, the handheld gaming device. Is there anything else that you think they're going to be pushing around that sort of time?
There will be announcements. There will be announcements, according to Denny, the founder. I think USDC on Sui is the next big move. If we see Circle issue on Sui, that legitimizes it as a stable coin network. That's just huge. I'm waiting for that. I think that they might announce that. But at Breakpoint, we're looking at Solana 2.0 announcement. Firedance, I don't know if you saw, they put up a new web page with some new status. So it's going to be Firedance 2.0, Solana, and then something else. And Totally hinting at Breakpoint. So I think those 2 coins are the must to hold. You got to hold Sol and Sui. That's the next gen blockchain tech, best practice blockchains right now, with unbelievable founders, unbelievable teams. Famous developers at this point.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Marty, and Mando and CTO jump in here. What happens to all the old stuff with no adoption? What happens to the ADAs and the XRPs? How come they still have huge market caps?
Locked in. They can't sell. They're locked into staking. They can't unstake. That was their trick early on, especially Cardano. They locked in people at a rate where they can't exit until a certain date, which I think starts in October for Cardano. So we should see some Cardano action in October, and then next year it starts to unravel. So whether people sell Cardano when they can, we don't know. But Cardano, I think, is one that we should watch, could potentially drop. But you're right. There's at least 20 other old chains, with at least 2 to 10 billion locked in them that have done nothing. It's 2024. Everything else is just launching new things and acquiring new users and getting announcements, and nothing from them, literally zero news. So I think we're going to see a big flow of capital this coming year, guys, out of those projects, and a consolidation, right? Which is well due, and we need it in the industry. There's too many coins.
I think TSLA is sticky, and some of these are religions. I do. It's one of the most interesting things I've thought about crypto. Is like, think about that for the tech or any other form of tech. Yeah, markets go in cycle. The NASDAQ goes in cycle, but the companies themselves in the NASDAQ change all the time. Things drop out of it. It's really, really weird for crypto in that we assume that cycles will be the same for all coins. Like, if Bitcoin goes higher, a dead coin will also rally. Like, that's the assumption for a lot of people, and that's just like not the same in any other form of tech. Like, you're not buying the competitors to Amazon now than that they were back in 2001 because Amazon rallies. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense for people to do that. But it's just something in crypto.
Yeah, the dominance of Bitcoin. I mean, it is 57% dominant in market cap. So if it moves, I think all of the hedge fund bots probably correlate to Bitcoin. But it's always the top question for any newbie. Why does everything correlate to Bitcoin? There's no real answer. It's just a strange, fascinating thing. Specifically things like Solana, which have nothing to do with Bitcoin. Ethereum, their reserves are in Bitcoin. So one could say, majority of their underlying initial foundational reserves are fluctuating with Bitcoin. So the price, should correlate exactly like a mirror. But Solana doesn't, and these other projects don't. So why are they? It's very strange, and I think there will be a reckoning in the next year. We will start to see decoupling.
Yeah, and the other big elephant in the room is people talk a lot about Bitcoin dominance, but they forget to mention the fact that ETH dominance has tanked. They used to be 25%. Now it's 14%.
Should we bring that chart up? CTO, I think it's probably worth to bring up the CTO chart, the ETH chart here.
The CTO chart.
Yeah, the CTO chart.
For ETH dominance.
I was slow to bring up the SUI chart. It looks fantastic. Absolutely. Right here. So just wanted to add that. Sorry, I was slow to bring it up. ETH.
Yeah, I think you should all buy some SUI immediately. Under $1.
ETH. It looks the same as it's done now for the longest time. It looks absolutely garbage. Previous supports turn into resistance over and over again. And there is no sign of this turning around here. I mean, of course, anything can happen. So they say, in football, the ball is round, anything can happen. In crypto, anything can happen, but there are no signs of this turning around. In fact, it starts, this starts developing here into a descending triangle, which is another bearish pattern if it confirms here. It's like if this breaks on the downside here, that's a short opportunity. So, I mean, we have no signs of Ethereum turning around. And I mean, I used to be a big Ethereum kind of created a lot of the innovation in crypto with smart contracts and all that stuff. But then they got very slow. It's like a big machine to run. It got very complex, and other projects are running ahead. That's what we're seeing.
I mean, with regards to ETH BTC, I follow Benjamin Cowan a lot with regards to that pair because he knows it very well. He did a chart recently. He showed how ETH BTC is pretty much mirroring what it did in 2016 and 2019. And if it does the same move, it's going to end at around $1,500.
This time is different. This is the point I've been saying for years. And CTO, how many times I've talked to you and put you on the spot regarding technology and tech debt. The old stuff just can't cut it. And I know, Mandy, you've got an agenda item regarding L2s, which fits perfectly in here right now.
I'll share it now, yeah.
Hold on a second.
This has been the big debate, really, for ETH this week. This is something that, if you listen to Bankless or you listen to any of the more ETH-focused podcasts, there's a lot of debate about how L2s are stealing all the revenue from the L1s. Yeah. These firms are making... These L2s are making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars a month, and basically only giving back fractions, like less than $100 sometimes in fees back to the L1. It's like alarmingly small. And there's now a big question about whether this way of scaling is just going to be kind of
Yeah,
the end of ETH to a certain extent.
It's a comedy of errors because from the very beginning, anybody knows I called L2 a band-aid. It basically they're designed to deal with the scalability issues of the L1 and to bring users. But the rev share setup has been catastrophic. When Vitalik came out a few months ago, said their focus is going to be on L2s, then I said that chain is dead. It cannot survive. They're just basically the L2s. Not only are they cannibalizing themselves, but they're also cannibalizing the L1, which is quite profound. And on top of that, you have the ETH ETF that everybody thought was going to be a savior. That thing has drained $600 billion since launch, or 600 billion.
Yeah,
massive amounts.
The ETF. I mean, if people are getting FUD around the Bitcoin ETF, the ETH ETF,
Disaster.
it's net outflows. Volumes are massively diminishing, and the outflows are actually only picking up. Like it's institutions have not come for ETH so far for this ETF.
So, Marty and Mando, what do you guys think of that? L2s, what does it mean for the whole chain?
I mean, my personal opinion has been the same the whole time. I think that I've been in software my whole life, and layering never works. You create dependency chains, and all that does is create inefficiencies in leadership, decision making. Just remember, if Ethereum changes one line of code, 20 L2 code bases now have to get changed, retested, bug checked. And if anything, if one makes a bug fix, now all the others have to make the bug fix, and the L1 needs to be back tested. It just creates paralysis.
Yeah.
In the code base, and that's what I see.
Is there an analog to telco CTO?
Yeah. I mean, you have to start thinking like this: what if something goes wrong? Because something will always go wrong. And I know we talked about it before. I'm sure Marty will agree here. Let's say that there is a catastrophic bug in one of the L2s. So $10 billion go missing in that L2. Is Vitalik supposed to roll back the L1 to fix it or not? That's a very big question. And then if he does it once, should he fix everything in this L2 or not? It becomes like an impossible situation. And that this will probably happen because those L2 are becoming quite centralized, and something bad is going to happen at one point. So I feel that it's gotten a very complicated situation and not particularly good.
Yeah, I think for me, and I said this a few months ago, I had a bull case for ETH, which is that you had institutional adoption. And what has become increasingly obvious is the L2s are stealing that adoption. They're stealing that adoption, and they're actually stealing users away from the L1. They're stealing revenue. And you have chains like Base, like Coinbase, which I actually think Coinbase can create an amazing chain here in Base. But ETH's only real use case, apart from being the gas token, which again, Coinbase can change at any time, is just being collateral on the system. It's not being used as a form of exchange necessarily. It doesn't need to be with stable coins. So you kind of have this situation where ETH is looking increasingly precarious with the model it has. It's very takes a long time for it to update. It's not as centralized as Solana is in terms of being able to make big updates to the chain. That's just the nature of it. It takes years. So now that it seems to have been this almost misstep with the L2s as where they imagined all the transactions would happen, they're taking all the revenue as well. And the only way that ETH gets back to the level it needs to be is with massive scale. That being said, like one of the other points I had on here was Coinbase hit a 7-month low this week. Had the worst week I think it had all year this week. I like Coinbase. I think Coinbase is kind of like my ETH trade here. Like I think Coinbase could see a lot of that institutional adoption, particularly in the US. And I think it's gonna make a lot of money with Base, because it's going to steal basically a lot of the revenue that was going to the L1 before. It's going to have a lot of the users. I'm a fan. If I want to play the ETH trade this cycle, like ETH ecosystem being valuable, I don't want to buy ETH. I think I'd rather buy Coinbase.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because you mentioned the Coinbase store ranking. I think it was in March, it was ranked number 40, and now it's ranked number 500. But I shared this the other day that the Bitcoin spot trading volume dominance is back to pre-Bitcoin spot ETF levels. And for the bull cycle to continue, or to know we're even in a bull market, retail needs to enter the game. And we're basically mid-cycle, and retail has not joined the party yet. So that actually, that's actually a bullish sign when you think about it. What Mando, does that make sense to you at all?
Yeah, 100%. I think, like for me, Coinbase is a different beast, right? It has Circle, or is it Circle Stake? It has Base, and then it has just generally crypto coming back. I think you can paint a very, very bullish picture even for Base, right? Maybe not for ETH, but for Base as being an onboarding mechanism for different institutions and consumers. And I think you can make a very bullish case for Circle. And I think you can put a very bullish case for crypto coming back with, let's say, Trump coming in and potentially more regulation, allowing even more things to happen on Base. It's not that I hate ETH or but I just think if I'm really, really bullish on ETH, I think I want to be bullish on L2s. And I don't love L2 tokens even. I think I'd just rather buy Coinbase stock.
My opinion is that I think the second the SEC make a S1 specific to digital assets, Coinbase will launch a base token, and that'll be the end of their connection to ETH. That's my theory.
But can they exist independently? Can they exist without leveraging Ethereum? That's my question.
Well, they only use Ethereum for the security of the network, but
yeah, but
they've
what
got
are they
a giant organization. They have 1 million Bitcoin. I mean, they can do their own security. I think they did it for regulatory reasons. Didn't launch Base as a token, but they're an optimism shop. Base is a derivative of the optimism framework, which has the OP token. So I think the OP token might be the play, Mando. Because that's underlying might become a Base derivative. Base might be a derivative of the OP.
Look, we spoke about it last week. The Base was seeing absolutely massive users. People have, when you look through the data, it does feel like a lot of that is like Sybil expecting a Base token down the line. So maybe we do get a Base token.
Let's remember this conversation in a year. So I think there'll be a Base token.
I just don't know if I even love OP though. Like all of these things I think OP is a DAO as well, right? Just like Arbitrum. And they're not. There's no way to get money back to users. Like for me, Coinbase makes money from Base. It makes about, I think, $30 million a year, right? Like
I'm looking at the financials now, actually, and that's one of the problems because we're going into Q3 results, considering summer weakness, no app store action, spot trading volume down. That's where they make all their cash, $50 a trade or whatever they charge. That's going to be bad. They could run negative this next quarter. That would be the time to swoop in and buy. Not now, but after those terrible results.
Base right now is backed by Ethereum, which is a market cap of 260 billion, but they have 1 million Bitcoin in their vault. So they could simply back it by their own inventory and have even more security. Yeah. I think it's a no-brainer. There will be a Base token, and I would buy it.
Yeah, so I just looked now. Base actually makes 30 million a month, so around 360 million annualized, at least back in April. But anyway, it's not even that I love ETH plays. I'm just saying if I was to buy one, it would be Coinbase here, just because I think there are some things that can come back and be strong about that ecosystem. I'm not sure if the value accrues to ETH. I think I can be bullish on ETH as a network for adoption, particularly from the institutional side. I'm still just trying to work out what's the best asset to own, and that's a problem for ETH. Monolithic chains like Solana, you just want to buy Solana. Like Sui, you just want to buy Sui. You don't sit there and go like, well, maybe I want to buy one of these L2 tokens or buy Coinbase. That just isn't really a problem in that sort of for monolithic chains like that. So I think that's the problem with ETH. I think we've spoken about it various different ways. I don't think we're like purely ETH haters, but like this just feels as though they've made some missteps, and ETH, I think, is as an asset is not the one who's gaining the most from them now.
One final point, just not to completely diss on ETH. I watch transactions all day, whale clips, big transactions, and ETH is just heavily used between institutions because of its liquidity. You can't send 100 million on Solana. You're going to get a lot of slippage. There's just not enough liquidity yet. But ETH, you can send 100 million between two wallets very easily for just the gas price. So until that changes, until Solana's TVL goes up, which might happen from the Binance staking token, by the way. We spoke about that last time. I think ETH will be used predominantly for large value transfers of money until that time. I think it's an arbitrage play.
So maybe let's move into something we touched upon just before, which is the election again. Trump's odds seemingly are up only at the moment, at least with Nate Silver. We've gone up to 64% chance of him winning on Nate Silver's models. Now, part of this, if you go into the data, is the fact that Trump supporters under poll. It looks like on a lot of the other polls that are being taken, it's much closer. Sometimes even Kamala's ahead. But you have Nate Silver's model up to 64% chance of Trump winning. Polymarket, I think, is again a little bit closer. It's around 55, 45, that sort of range. You've obviously got the debate tomorrow, which I think a lot of people will be looking at. But I'm surprised. This is one of the reasons why I'm getting more bullish, is because I kind of feel like this time next month, if Trump keeps these sort of odds going into it, you could see a really monumental move. I think Bernstein came out today and said they think 90K Bitcoin if Trump gets elected. And that just feels like kind of an easy layup, given how positive he's been on crypto.
Yeah, I think they also said 30,000 if Kamala wins.
Yeah.
80 to 90 if Trump wins. And that would happen in the fourth quarter. And I've been watching Bernstein for quite a lot. They are quite bullish on Bitcoin, and they have exposure to Bitcoin, and they watch it very carefully. They also watch the Bitcoin miners. So
do you think 30K if Kamala gets in? That seems
weird. That number. It seems weird.
Bernstein said that. They said predictions for Bitcoin's price based on the outcome for the end of this year. Election impact. Harris victory scenario. If Vice President Kamala Harris wins, Bitcoin could potentially drop to $30,000 range. Trump victory. Donald Trump win could push Bitcoin prices to $80,000 to $90,000 range by the fourth quarter. That's their exact vernacular.
Seems like they've basically just gone, right, it's at 55K, we'll go 25K up, 25K down. That's what we're at.
That's analyst mathematics, I guess.
Yeah, I'll show that to the boss. Those odds work. Yeah. I don't think it goes to 30K if Kamala gets in. She's been more bullish as well. Like she's definitely been more bullish than Biden on crypto, it seems. But Trump, I just feel like that's the way that the different policies that he's talking about, plus the way he's even talking about a Bitcoin reserve, and you've got RFK in this time next month. If those odds are there and Bitcoin's sitting there at around 50 to 55K, that just seems like a screaming buy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I had Perrin Boring of Digital Chamber in DC, the #1 crypto lobbyist, on the show, and had a nice interview with her for 2 hours. And the most striking thing she said, first of all, she's not a fan of Kamala Harris's crypto views because she has no views. She's never been public. So even in DC, she's never really given, any idea of her stance on crypto. I looked to the debate maybe to crack that nut. But she said the most frightening thing is that if Kamala wins, it appears as if the Fed is trying to take over stablecoin regulation from the states, and she used the word, they're trying to outsource CBDC to the layer ones. So, which is frightening. We don't even want to see the word CBDC. So stablecoin could be a proxy CBDC if Kamala wins as well, which is pretty scary.
So you think something like Circle essentially just becomes owned by the Fed?
Yeah, Circle becomes a CBDC. Do as we say, block this wallet, put limits on this, capital controls. Controls will come into crypto.
And and I think the other thing is it's more about fear of what would happen to the markets. Think financial markets, think Wall Street, because there is a ton of pent-up fear from the people that I talk to about unrealized capital gains taxes, increasing tax rates, etc., that they will destroy the stock market, which means the market will plunge, which will take down all assets with it, including Bitcoin. So I think that's where Bernstein is coming from. It's fear of tax changes.
Yeah, I think that's an important point what you just said there, though, about the stablecoin regulation. It does feel as though Kamala will maybe lead to a bit more uncertainty in crypto. I don't think Gensler will keep his position, but it does feel as though they're going to want slightly more control. Whereas, I mean, the Bitcoin Trump family is launching a DeFi project at the moment. It feels as though they're happy to take some risks. He's done several different NFT drops. He doesn't care if this is breaking sort of SEC regulation. He's going to do it anyway, which I think is.
And their decision to use Aave is probably the biggest bullish Ethereum event of the week. that the Trump
maybe.
thing is on Aave. It's an Aave floor. So they went with Ethereum.
Yeah, they went with an ETH Aave mix, it looks like, for their project, although it seemed to be after a project on AVAX. Maybe we should look up at what's coming up for the next week, because as we kind of get towards the end of this. But I know, Marty, you picked up on all the different things that we should be looking at. Japanese GDP already came out. We've obviously got the US presidential debate tomorrow, which will be huge. US CPI.
We got Gensler twice in front of the House Services Committee. That's going to be interesting, right? 10th and on the 23rd.
And can you, Momento, can you blow up the calendar so the audience can see? It's hard for them to visualize it. Yeah.
Maybe that's easier, but it comes thick and fast. We've had a quiet August, but over the next 2 weeks and probably over the next few months, we're going to see just tons of central banks around the world move to decrease rates or turn the taps on in terms of QE. Everyone basically apart from Japan. And then you're going to see a bunch of different economic data which will swing things. Because as we start to reduce rates, everyone's going to be very, very scared about, are we going to get a hard or a soft landing here, and maybe the state to which we go into recession as we go as rates go down. So I think this period, September, October, this is why you see so much volatility, because you start to see changes in policy mixed with a lot of economic data. So for macro, we have Fed, ECB over the next 2 weeks. I think the Bank of Canada was last week, right? You have CPI on Wednesday, and then you have politics with Trump and Kamala as well. And then for crypto, you have a bunch of conferences around this sort of time. Token 2049 probably being the biggest one, then Breakpoint, then Masari's conference, then SuiCon, like we just spoke about. And then it just feels like an absolute, and then CZ getting out of jail finally on the 29th, which who knows what that means, but an absolutely crazy period here for volatility. This is why we're saying we would be unsurprised if we go down to that bottom, like let's say high 40s, just because you have to expect a lot of volatility in September and October.
Yeah, I feel like the first half of the month is macro headwinds for crypto, and then the tail of the month seems to be crypto bullish. So we could see that V-shaped recovery in the first half of this month.
And that's what typically happens, actually. And there is another perspective on.
Can I just ask one question? Yeah. Do you guys think this unrealized capital gains tax proposal will go through? I mean, obviously that would tank the markets, because big holders of big stocks, they have to sell the stocks to pay the tax. And there's a lot of, big shareholders whose main source of asset are these stocks. And if you picture a founder or someone, he or she owned the stocks, the company gets valuable, but the person doesn't actually have any other money. So it would make it very difficult, I think, to start and create new startups. So it would get a lot of long-term effects, but the short-term effect would be that a lot of people would need to go to the stock market and sell a bunch of stocks, which is going to tank the market. And I think exactly like you said, that's going to tank Bitcoin as well, because it is correlated with other assets, and people rebalance their portfolios and so on and so forth. But do you guys think it will go through, or it seems like a crazy proposal?
It is a crazy, but it's been the plan for many, many years. It's part of the original Biden plan to go after, make everything more equitable, share more of the wealth, go after the people with 10 million plus, 100 million plus, take their money and give it to the poor people for different types of surgeries or whatever they need to get. But the problem is the markets do not like uncertainty. Even if it may not happen, the chance that it could happen is enough to spook markets. And of course, the billionaires will flee. They will give up their American passports and they'll run to a tax-free domicile. That's what happens. It happened in Sweden years ago. We've got so many playbooks of this. But back to September, this September could be different, where I wrap this up. It may not be as bad as we expect, because in election years, the September dip is not that bad. And I do believe there'll be a lot of volatility. I do believe in that V, Marty, that you mentioned as well. I've been talking about that for a while too. But here you can see the average loss during election year September's is only 0.58%. So it's not cataclysmic. But we have to see how this turns out.
Yeah, could you bring up the S&P chart, because it does look like there's a bit of a double top on the S&P. I think some people have been
Big time. Yeah.
Looking at that and
I will
being a
bring it
little
up.
bit more worried. I think you make a very good point. I think it's a lot of her biggest donors are basically, again, we just don't really know with Kamala. Like, she hasn't really said that much, right? We've heard whispers of policy like, oh, she's gonna walk back part of what Biden's tax plan was, but she's still kind of for it. But like, who knows? But I think it would be very unpalatable for a lot of her biggest donors, and you can kind of hear them, right? I think you saw Mark Cuban go out last week, basically saying that he thought that he's told her he thought this was crazy, and that would cause a big issue. I do think it affects stocks more than it affects Bitcoin. There's been a lot of margin loans against stocks, which people would move to reduce the debt against their stock holdings. So I think it probably does affect tech stock a little bit more. But yeah, you have correlation.
Another frightening part of it is that the real estate is part of that as well, unrealized tax. I read the bill. So
yep.
The ultra rich with over 100 million, all of their real estate, as it appreciates, they'll also have to pay unrealized. It's a horrible thing. I think they'll flee to Dubai.
Exactly, and then it makes it even worse then, because they can't sell 20% of the house probably. So they have to sell the stocks instead to pay for the unrealized gains on real estate.
Find liquidity elsewhere.
Yeah. So here there is at least a clear answer. So is it the double top or not? It's not a double top yet. It becomes a double top if the low between the tops is breached. So if we go down here, if we break this low here, then it becomes a double top, and then that's not good. That would be a bearish signal, but we're not there yet. This could just be consolidation here, and it continues up later. That we don't know yet. So it's not a double top yet. It could become a double top, but it isn't one yet.
And the double top on the S&P 500 is legendary, because that's what happened in I think the early 2000, March 2000, if I remember, before the dot-com bust. We had a double top, and now everybody who's been around for 25, 35 years knows it's a terrifying thing on the S&P 500, because I can't remember, it peaked at like 5,000, and then it fell 37% to 3,200, and then it went back to 5,000, and then it just took a complete dump. So is that what you're showing there? That's what has people nervous. But the problem this time around, which didn't exist back then, is we have $6.3 trillion on the sidelines that needs to be put to work. When rates get cut, and there's the other important thing is there's more than a 50% chance that we'll get 25 basis point cuts in the next 90 days. Okay, we're talking about December. 50% chance. When people aren't getting any return on their fiat, they'll put it into risk assets, and that will pump the market as well as the money printer too. So we have, I believe, more tailwinds than headwinds.
Yeah. And like I said, I think Trump gets in. So I think, like I said, 90K is my magnet.
Yeah.
All right.
By the way, for the audience here, just to clarify, we're not political. We look at markets. So people, somebody said we're a bunch of Trumpers. We're not Trumpers. We're market watchers.
Right.
Is that fair to say, Marty? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I support anything that pumps my bags, literally. I don't care, religion, politics, whatever pumps my bags, it's good for me. So,
and CTO,
no one can really argue. Anyone that argues is just being a hypocrite.
Yeah, somebody said CTO feels uncomfortable here with these Trumpers. We're not Trumpers, but I think you're probably on the same page that it's what's best for the markets and best for society and best for economic growth. That's what helps everybody at the end of the day.
We don't even live in the US. I think that's the first thing to note here. Like,
about the Elon Musk thing, right? Elon Musk now aligning with Trump. So voting for Trump now, for me personally, since I use X to make a living and it's the most amazing platform for free speech, it feels like a vote for Trump becomes a proxy vote for Elon. I think that's where I'm standing now. I'm voting for Elon.
Really?
To come in and al fuera, all of this bullshit at the highest levels. So I think that's a huge swing for me. So I have no problem saying I'm voting for Trump because I'm voting for Elon.
I think it's par for the course for us getting shouted at for political stuff in the comments. I think I've been called a pro-Kamala supporter, pro-Trump supporter, pro-RFK supporter all the time in the comments. So yeah, we're just looking at what this means for crypto.
And in full disclosure, I've always been pro RFK supporter, so that's my religious beliefs. CTO, any thoughts on that final thought?
I mean, I think it's absolutely necessary, whatever your political views, it's necessary to understand how the political climate will affect the markets, because that is something that is possible actually to understand what will likely happen. After, you think about it a little, you discuss with your friends like we're doing now, and I find that enormously helpful. So I think regardless of your political views, I think it's a necessary discussion to have to try to understand that.
Yeah,
And
I think we're going to see.
I mean, I think that personally, if you ask me, I don't know. I'm not a political expert, but there are 330 million people, a lot of them absolutely amazing in the US. I'm not sure that if you narrow that down, those 330 million down to 2 people, I'm not sure it's even those 2. So I don't know how the world ended up there, but here we are. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Hopefully we get a lot more information on Tuesday. And part of the issue, like the thing about Kamala here, even for crypto, is we just don't know. We don't know a lot about the policy, and I think we'll hopefully hear about a lot on Tuesday. So tomorrow, make sure you look into it if you have any crypto bags. Hopefully that does become a topic. It wasn't in the last debate, but maybe it will be this time. All right, guys.
Excellent.
I think that's it for this week. Thanks so much again for doing this. We will see you again next Monday. Obviously, you can follow James for CTO on YouTube and on X. Marty's on X as well. I know he has his own community there as well, and I'm on X and mandominutes.com. Thanks again. We will see you again next week. Bye, guys.
Thank you all.
So, guys, thanks, James, Mando,
Great week.
CTO. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Best
Cheers,
show
guys.
on YouTube, apparently. This is the best crypto show on YouTube.
Best
That's
crypto
what
show on
Martin
YouTube.
is saying. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
So let's keep